Hey, Lions Nation! We're back with another exclusive video bringing you all the latest news about our beloved Detroit Lions. Before we get started, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss anything about the team. Now, let's get into the news. The moment the alert hit the league, everything stopped. Phones buzzed, notifications exploded in waves, and every sports desk in America froze with the same stunned expression plastered across analysts' faces. No one, absolutely no one, saw this coming. Zack Martin signs with the Detroit Lions. Immediate impact on the O-line. The headline didn't just ring out. It detonated like a bomb. Zack Martin, the unshakable pillar of Dallas, the trench warlord, the man whose presence defined a decade of dominance in the NFC, was going north to Detroit. To Dan Campbell's blue-collar, kneecap-shredding, war-built football machine. Fans stared at their screens as if the world had glitched. Defenders around the league sent messages laced with disbelief and dread. Offensive linemen across NFL facilities muttered curses under their breath, knowing their position had just become even more brutal because Martin wasn't just a guard. He wasn't even just a superstar. He was the closest thing the offensive line world had to inevitability, a relentless, precision-crafted force of nature who played every snap like he was dragging the earth beneath him. Inside the Lions facility, the reaction wasn't explosive, it was electric. Like the building itself shifted its weight, exhaling as if welcoming a long-awaited king. Staffers described the moment reports reached Allen Park as a shockwave rolling down every hallway. Coaches burst out of offices, offensive assistants slapped whiteboards, and veteran players stared at their phones with wide, disbelieving smiles. "We just signed a fortress," one lineman whispered, another muttered. "This changes everything." And they were right, because Martin embodied everything Detroit had been preaching, but not yet fully achieving: grit, violence, discipline, swagger, intelligence. Leadership built through scars. The Lions had spent years transforming their identity, forging a culture founded on suffering turned into strength, but every revolution needs a symbol, a cornerstone, a general. And Martin, he was born for that role. The way he moved defenders didn't just change plays. It changed games, changed seasons, changed expectations, but the deeper truth, the one insiders whispered but never publicly admitted, was that Detroit had been preparing for this moment long before the world knew it was possible. Campbell's obsession with trench dominance wasn't an ideology, it was a blueprint, and for months, quiet signals had hinted that Detroit was planning something bigger than anyone imagined. Scouts had begun studying Dallas film with unusual intensity. Offensive assistants had held late-night sessions rewriting scheme concepts for hypothetical personnel shifts. Campbell himself had been spotted pacing the facility at ungodly hours, talking to staffers in low tones about finishing the build. No one connected the pieces then. But now it was clear. They weren't adjusting. They were hunting, waiting, preparing for the exact moment Dallas made a mistake or hesitated. And when that hesitation came, even for a second, Detroit struck like a predator that had tasted blood. The negotiations were described as surgical, terrifying, and too efficient to be real. Detroit moved fast, faster than teams usually move when big names are involved. They didn't stall. They didn't bargain weakly, they didn't blink. Executives familiar with the process later revealed that Detroit's pitch wasn't just money or scheme, it was culture, purpose, identity. They told Martin, "We're building a dynasty from the dirt up. Come cement the foundation." And for a player who'd spent years absorbing punishment, carrying expectations, and fighting for a franchise trapped in its own cyclical misery, the offer was intoxicating. Detroit wasn't selling hope, Detroit was selling inevitability. A future where his strength mattered, where his leadership didn't get lost beneath star noise, where he could be a legend, not just a name. When word leaked that the contract was signed, the NFL panicked. Defensive coordinators reportedly threw their tablets, pass rushers groaned. Rookie defenders sent prayer emojis to teammates because they knew what this meant. Detroit wasn't just protecting their quarterback, they were preparing to suffocate entire defensive lines. With Martin anchoring the interior, gaps would vanish, pockets would extend, running lanes would explode open like chasms. And the Lions, already one of the most physical teams in the league, would become a nightmare constructed in steel and bone. Outside Ford Field, fans gathered again, chanting long into the night. Some held signs thanking Dallas for finally waking up to late. Others wore makeshift shirts with Martin's name taped on. The air buzzed with the kind of noise usually reserved for playoff parades. Detroit, long ignored, long mocked, long starved, felt something shift deep beneath its foundations. A new era, a new identity, a violent new blueprint forming beneath the stadium lights. And as reporters scrambled for quotes, as analysts scrambled for explanations, a single truth echoed across the league. The Lions didn't just sign Zack Martin. They armed themselves with inevitability. Before we move on, take a second to drop a like and subscribe. That way, you'll stay up to date with every exclusive Lions update. And you'll even have a chance to win an official Detroit Lions jersey. Let's keep going. But behind the celebrations, behind the seismic reactions and social media meltdowns, a darker, more cinematic story unfolded. One that insiders would whisper about for years. Sources deep within the organization revealed that Martin's arrival wasn't merely opportunistic. It was orchestrated, strategized, executed with the precision of a covert military operation. And it all began in an underground room beneath the Lions' headquarters, a room that rarely appeared in official tours. A room used only for the most sensitive planning sessions, weeks before the signing. Campbell, offensive coordinator Ben Johnson, and several high-ranking executives met there in silence. The projector illuminated a single image, Zack Martin pancaking a defender so violently that the clip had amassed millions of views. Campbell didn't speak for several seconds. Then, in his gravel-coated voice, he said, "This is what we're missing." That sentence set off a chain reaction inside the organization. Staffers were assigned tasks with no explanations. Cap specialists ran simulations without context. Scouts pulled film from Dallas archives and labeled it under unrelated categories to avoid suspicion. Analysts studied Detroit's most painful offensive stalls, the moments where one missed block changed the drive, and inserted hypothetical annotations. With Martin, this continues. With Martin, this becomes 6 points. With Martin, this defense breaks. It became an obsession. Not reckless, not emotional, strategic, precise, cold. Detroit was not chasing a player. Detroit was aligning its franchise toward a tipping point, and then the opportunity came. Dallas hesitated, maybe over money, maybe over age, maybe over differing future visions. But that hesitation rippled across the league like a scent across the savannah, and Detroit, freshly sharpened and starving for greatness, pounced the moment the signal came. Campbell reportedly walked out of his office, stared at his assistant GM, and said simply, "It's time, make the call." What followed was a negotiation described as merciless. Detroit didn't flinch at demands, didn't crumble under pressure, didn't second guess. This wasn't bargaining, this was claiming, and once the deal was sealed, Campbell didn't celebrate, he didn't fist pump, he didn't grin. He simply exhaled, a long, heavy, satisfied breath that echoed in the small room as if the entire organization had been holding it for years. Players felt the shift instantly. During the first team meeting after the announcement, the atmosphere was so charged that rookies reported feeling dizzy, like the air itself was vibrating. Campbell stood at the front of the room, arms crossed, eyes burning with a kind of calm fury. When Martin walked in, the room went silent, not out of intimidation, but out of respect. Players rose from their seats without realizing they were doing it. Even veterans looked starstruck, seeing in Martin not just a teammate, but the embodiment of Detroit's evolution. Campbell broke the silence with a sentence that would become the Lions' internal mantra for the season. "This year, we don't move around them. We move through them." Practices transformed overnight. What had once been grueling became punishing. What had once been competitive became gladiatorial. Running backs described holes so clean they felt like freeways. Quarterbacks described pockets so solid it felt like time slowed down. Defensive linemen faced Martin in drills and walked away bruised, humbled, and oddly inspired. One defender said, "He blocked me like he already knew what I was going to do. I've never felt anything like that." Another muttered, "He's not blocking, he's dismantling." Even Ben Johnson changed, scripting plays with a level of creativity that staffers said bordered on weaponized genius. With Martin anchoring the line, Johnson began designing concepts he had previously shelved. Plays to risky without perfect protection. Plays built for domination rather than survival, and fans, Detroit could barely contain them. Crowds at training camp tripled, tickets vanished, merchandise spiked, people painted murals. Chants erupted at midnight outside Ford Field. Detroit had always loved power. But Martin wasn't just power, he was mastery, technique sharpened into brutality, precision polished into violence. Fans knew what his arrival meant. Detroit's time wasn't coming someday. Detroit's time was now, across the league. Fear spread quietly, but steadily. Anonymous defensive coordinators gave quotes like, "You can't shift around Martin. You can't trick him. You can't overpower him. You have to survive him." Analysts referred to Detroit's new line as the Great Wall of the NFC. Linebackers studying film reportedly groaned when they realized how drastically Detroit's run schemes would expand. And edge rushers, they simply adjusted their expectations downward. In the end, the trade did something more than strengthen Detroit. It changed the league's psychology. It sent a message loud, forceful, undeniable. Detroit doesn't rebuild anymore. Detroit doesn't hope. Detroit doesn't wait. Detroit takes, and with Zack Martin anchoring the trenches, Detroit isn't just dangerous. Detroit is inevitable. We bring you the latest Lions news every single day, so make sure you're subscribed. Hit that like button and turn on notifications so you don't miss a thing. And of course, drop a comment below with your thoughts on today's news. Your voice makes a difference for Lions Nation. See you in the next video.